time I welcomed you into my garden, we were anticipating the beginnings of a summer full of cooking. But this time, as you can see, the year has moved on. The leaves have turned and the last little apple clinging to my apple tree heralds the first days of winter. But the passing of summer isn't to be feared, because winter has its own glory, and the celebration of good food and good cooking becomes even more sharply focused. So if the weather's dull or rainy or cold and dark, fear not, because we can have all the colour and drama we need inside. Winter's a time to be warm, to be cosy, to be comforted and pampered. So I'm going to share with you some new recipes and some old favourites that will hopefully do just that. Well, from autumn leaves to salad leaves, and we're going to start our autumn collection with a warm salad made with poached eggs and frizzled chorizo. But first of all, especially for those younger viewers who might be watching, we're going to kick off with a basic cookery lesson, and that is how to poach an egg. Well, it's quite easy once somebody's shown you how. If you don't know how, it can be quite daunting. The first ingredient you need is water, and the water has to be absolutely right to poach an egg. You want it almost coming to the boil, just so that you can see a few little bubbles on the bottom of the pan, as is just beginning to happen now. Just those little bubbles coming up to the top. So that's just about ready now. The next thing you do is you just drop the eggs into the water. Doesn't need any salt or vinegar or anything, just plain water. So let's just put the first egg in. You can break it into a cup first if you want to. And then the salad is for 4 people, so we're going to do 4 eggs. So we'll put another one in. And then a third one. And the next thing I have to tell you is to be very careful that you buy very fresh eggs for poaching. They need to be fresh, so look very, very carefully at the date stamps. Date stamping is getting better and better now, and eggs are getting fresher and fresher to buy, so you just have to be a bit careful about that. So there's the 4 eggs. They're in the water. If they just stick out at the top here, you can do what you do when you actually fry an egg, and that's just baste it a little bit with the water. And then just leave them like that for exactly 1 minute. And you need to put a timer on, because otherwise you forget or the phone rings, so just 1 minute. And then the next stage is you remove the pan from the heat, put the eggs aside and leave them, put the timer on again, this time for 10 minutes. And that gives you plenty of time to carry on and make the salad dressing. And you start off with a good, solid, heavy frying pan and a tablespoon of olive oil, and you heat it, well, hot as you dare. It's got to be really hot, because we want to frizzle this, which is chorizo sausage. Now, chorizo is a Spanish pork sausage flavoured with paprika, and you can buy it either in a large piece or sometimes in smaller sausages which come in packs. But either way, this is how they should be cubed for the salad. And then following the sausage, we're going to add 1 medium onion, that's also been finely chopped. Stir that into the hot oil. And then, keeping the Spanish theme and the paprika flavours, we've got 1 red pepper that's also been chopped in the same way. And then we're going to add 2 cloves of garlic, and these have been also finely chopped. Then just move it around the pan so that all of that hits this very, very high heat. I've got the heat on full, because what we want is nice toasted, frazzled edges to this, which gives a nice flavour to the salad. And you need to leave that now for about 6 minutes. Then, after the 6 minutes, we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. First, a little bit of seasoning of salt and freshly milled pepper. And then we're going to add 2 more tablespoons of olive oil. And that will be followed by 1.5 tablespoons of sherry vinegar. And this is what's making the dressing. And then finally 3 tablespoons of dry sherry. 1, 2, 3. Let that all bubble and amalgamate together. And that's the salad dressing all ready. Turn the heat out. And now we'll go and look at the poached egg. If you don't like the little raggedy edges, if you're serving this, you can just take a knife there and cut it a little bit. I don't mind too much of that. Then what you do is you take a wad of kitchen paper and a good draining spoon, because you don't want any water in the salad, and then lift the poached egg out of the water and hold it onto the kitchen paper like that, just so that the excess water can drain off. And I hope you can see how beautiful that egg is. The white is set and the yolk will be just nice and creamy, which will be perfect for the salad. So we'll now take it over, put it onto the salad leaves. And now all I need to do is get the dressing. And this, as I said before, is enough for 4 people. Just sprinkle it over the salad. And then there's one more ingredient that's going to go on. And that is this one here, which is croutons. And these croutons have been baked in the oven with paprika to keep the flavours the same. And I'll be showing you how to make those a little later on. So that is warm poached egg salad with frizzled chorizo. Well, that's the first of our winter warm-ups. Now I'd like to show you another really good warm winter salad. I think we should eat lots more pulses actually, and this one is made with the tiny little pui lentils. It's called warm goat's cheese and lentil salad. You start by frying 1.5 ounces of roughly chopped walnuts in a tablespoon of olive oil and then remove them to a plate. This is a finely chopped small red onion, and it's been softened with a chopped garlic clove. Add 8 ounces of pui lentils, a bay leaf and some chopped thyme leaves. Then add 10 fluid ounces of boiling water, but don't add any salt at this stage. Simmer the lentils gently for 30 to 40 minutes. Now prepare the dressing. This is sea salt, mustard powder and garlic that has been crushed to a paste. And to this you add 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. That's followed by 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and finally 2 tablespoons of walnut oil. As soon as the lentils are tender, season them with salt, then mix them while they're warm with the dressing. Add some rocket leaves, then crumple some goat's cheese all over. Any goat's cheese is fine, but I like crottin best for this. Finally, sprinkle on the sautéed walnuts. Well, after the success of Caesar salad in the summer collection, I have been searching for another recipe that would really match that salad, which proved to be so popular. And I think I found one on a visit to Normandy. This is apple cider salad with a melted camembert dressing. But first of all, I want to talk to you about buying camembert, because for years I never quite got my camembert right. It was either underripe or over the top. So I thought now's the time to really get to grips with how to buy a camembert to make this absolutely incredible salad. So I want to run you through now. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks to actually make a camembert, for it to mature to the right point. And I've got in front of me now an early one that hasn't matured very far. And this you can tell because it's got a really white sort of furry crust clinging all around the edge of the camembert. And that's quite firm, really almost like a cheddar when you touch it. Now this is a medium ripe camembert here, and what happens as it begins to ripen, it's stored at temperature, the little bits of crust inside the camembert begin to show through the white, and you see it's just beginning to poke through all the way around the edge there. And then finally, when the camembert is ripe, first of all you've got the squidge test, which is in the middle, you can see that there. And then, as you can see, it begins to look almost reddish. The brown is poking through everywhere. There's also quite a bit of wrinkling there, and that is a ripe camembert. Now let's go through the whole lot again and show you inside what it looks like. So the early one, when you cut it in half, you find you've got that patch there, of unripened, the paler patch in the centre. And then the medium one should have a smaller bit. This is almost ready, this one here. You've just got that very pale piece of camembert there in the centre, so that would eat very nicely. And this one, which is ready today, is going to be lovely and ripe and soft and creamy. And I just hope you can see that lovely sort of, just that bit of squidge. It shouldn't be running, but it should be really nice and creamy like that in the centre. Now, how can you get your camembert to be like that when you want to make this salad? What you've got to do is watch the date stamp like a hawk. Try, if possible, to get an unpasteurised camembert, because like all unpasteurised cheeses, it has a much more flavour. And look at the date stamp, and the date stamp will tell you the exact day. Now, in this country, that means you've got to plan to eat camembert. When you pick it up, it'll probably be a fortnight's time, so put it in the garage or in a cool place, which is almost as good as a cellar, and let it ripen, and then eat it on the day it's ready, and you'll be able to enjoy it at its absolute best. Well, now I want to show you how to make the camembert dressing, and what you need to have is one ripe or almost ripe camembert, and the easiest way to deal with it is to cut it in half like this, first of all, have a really sharp knife, and then peel it the way you would peel an apple. Just run the sharp knife along the rind like this, taking it as close as you can away from the creamy camembert inside. Now, I won't have time to finish this. I'm just going to take a little bit more off there. But we'll move over, because we've got one, as usual, that is actually just beginning to melt on the hob here. The whole camembert, when the rind is off, goes into the saucepan, and then you put it on the most gentle heat you can give it. It mustn't be too high, the heat, and if you're worried about it, use a heat diffuser. And then it has another ingredient, a lovely Normandy ingredient that comes from the same area as the camembert, and that is creme fraiche. And when you see the colour of the creme fraiche, this is 2 tablespoons. You can see how they're related, can't you? They've both got that stunning creamy colour that you don't find anywhere else in the world other than in dairy products. Now, just stay with it. It's going to take about 3 or 4 minutes. Now, if your camembert isn't quite ripe, all you need to do is add another ingredient, 1 or 2 tablespoons of dry cider. Right, that's just about ready now, but first of all, I want to talk to you about croutons, because this salad is improved if it's got lots of crunchy croutons. And the way to make these, I'm just going to recap, although we did it on the summer collection, is you put cubes of bread, small cubes of bread, the smaller the better, in a bowl with a crushed clove of garlic, like that. Earlier we had paprika on them, but this time we're using garlic. And then you use a tablespoonful of really good olive oil, and just mix it all up together until they're thoroughly soaked in the oil. Pop them onto a baking sheet, onto a high shelf in a medium oven, and they'll turn crisp and golden and crunchy like these here in exactly 10 minutes. So now we're going to actually make the salad, and here it is. And the salad ingredients are, I think this is a hot dressing, so we need robust salad leaves. So what I'm using here is cos and rocket leaves. And then I've also got some thin slices of Cox's apple, skin left on, that have just been dipped into cider, then patted dry, just to stop them from browning. Now, let's have a look at the dressing. And what I haven't mentioned so far is that you can make this the day before if you want to. Keep it refrigerated, and then just pop it back on the heat until it becomes a nice creamy mass, as you can see here. And then let's just now have a look at the consistency. Yes, that's what we want to pour over the salad leaves. Something that looks like that. I'll just do it again so you can just see how luscious and gorgeous that is. So the hot dressing now is poured over the salad leaves. So pour half the dressing on now, and then take the other half to the table. And then the final touch is to add some crunchy croutons, and you have the very nicest, probably the very nicest winter salad of all. What I want to show you now is this wonderful autumnal braised dish, which is called pork braised in cider vinegar sauce, and for my money, I think this is one of the best braised dishes I've come across in a long time. Now, what you need for this is shoulder of pork. It's very important to have the right cut. You might buy it in a piece like that, in which case you'll trim off the rind and the fat there. When that's off, the piece of meat looks like this here, and you can ask a butcher to do that for you, to trim it for you, so that you end up coming home with it like this. But if you're thinking, well, I can see lots of sort of fat and membrane there, the thing you need to learn about meat cookery is that that's very important for braising. If you get really lean meat for braising, then it ends up dry at the end of the cooking time. So all this sort of little bits of membrane and fat are very important. So you've got to do the work then of trimming it up into little pieces like this, little bite-sized pieces. Then, in a cooking pot, here I've got a shallow oven-proof casserole. And I'm going to brown the meat. I've got a little bit of butter and some ground nut oil. And I'm going to brown the meat before I put the rest of the ingredients in. I just want to explain a little bit about browning meat. First of all, you need the pan really hot. And then the next thing you need to know is don't overcrowd the pan. If you put a lot of meat in at once, steam develops and it'll never brown, not in a million years. So just remember to only put in a few pieces at a time. It doesn't need to be in there for too long because it's going to get browned in the oven eventually. So just carry on like that, a few batches at a time. The next thing you do is add shallots to the pan, and I've got 12 peeled shallots here, and they've just been lightly browned. And now I'm going to add the next ingredient, which is a pint of medium cider. And I'm using medium cider because I think pork needs a little bit of sweetness. So in goes the cider. That gives a touch of sweetness, and then we need a touch of sharp. And the touch of sharp is this, which is 1/4 pint or 5 fluid ounces of cider vinegar. And if you're using cider vinegar, try and get the best cider vinegar you can, because it does make a difference. Now we're going to return the meat to the pan, so that can go back in to join the shallots and the cider and cider vinegar. And after that I'm going to add some seasoning of salt and pepper, and then some herbs. And I'm just going to add a few sprigs of fresh thyme here, perhaps about 4 sprigs altogether, and a couple of bay leaves. Now the interesting thing about this braised dish is it goes into the oven without a lid. You can see it's a wide, shallow pan, and what happens is it goes into a preheated oven, gas mark 3 or the equivalent, without a lid, and then in 1 1/4 hours, which is the time it takes to cook, what happens is the liquid reduces down and concentrates into the most unbelievable sauce. So we'll just put that into the oven now and give it the cooking time. Right, well, just in case you don't have a shallow casserole that will go into the oven like that, I suggest you use a 10-inch round or square shallow dish, but don't forget to preheat it first so that when that comes up to simmering point, it goes into a hot dish into the oven. Well, now I want to show you what to serve with that. And the first recipe I want to show you is the potato recipe of this autumn, and it's called potato and apple rosti. These potatoes have been boiled for 8 minutes, then cooled, and now I'm grating them on the coarse side of a grater. This is Granny Smith apples, grated as well, and they've been tossed in lemon juice to keep their colour, and then the excess juice is squeezed out before they join the potatoes. Season at this stage with salt, pepper and freshly grated nutmeg, then shape the mixture into small cakes. Finally, dust with flour and chill until you're ready to cook them. Brush the little rosti cakes with melted butter, pop them into a preheated oven, gas mark 7, and after 10 minutes turn them over. Give them another 10 minutes cooking time until they become crisp and golden. Once upon a time, autumn used to mean apples and pears, but now autumn means another beautiful fruit fresh over from New England, and that's the cranberry. And if limes were flavour of summer when we did the summer collection, I can tell you cranberries are definitely the flavour of autumn in this series. And the recipe we're going to make today is spiced sautéed red cabbage with cranberries. Now you start off in a nice big pan with lots of room to play, and you have 1 onion, a medium onion finely chopped, and a fat clove of garlic finely chopped, and you soften that for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, in a dessert spoon of a flavourless oil like ground nut oil. So now we're going to, while that's happening, we're going to deal with the red cabbage, and you need 1 pound of red cabbage for this, and sometimes you can get small ones that come approximately a pound, otherwise you probably need a half. And what you do is you just cut it into half or into quarters if it's a large one, take out the core and the ribby bits and then shred it finely. Now you can either shred it with a sharp knife, or you can shred it with a food processor, or you can hunt around and find one of these wonderful little gadgets here. This is a Japanese mandolin. It has a very sharp blade, so you have to be very careful, watch your fingers. But it does actually shred cabbage and other things really, really finely, really, really well, and really, really quickly, as you can see there. And you can use it for all sorts of other things, which I'll be showing you later on in the series. Now, I haven't got time to do all that, but I do have 1 pound of red cabbage finely shredded, and we'll take that over now to the cooking pan and turn the heat up high. And what you need to do now is get the heat really hot, the onions nicely softened. And then as soon as that's really, really hot, pile in the red cabbage. What needs to happen now is you need to stir it, keep it on the move, and let it mingle with the onions, and then, still leaving the heat high, we're going to add the spices. And the spices I'm going to use are 1/3 of a whole nutmeg grated, and always use whole nutmeg, never ready grated, because it soon loses all its kick if you buy it ready grated. And then I'm going to use 1/3 of a teaspoon, a rounded teaspoon of cinnamon. That's what that looks like. And ground cloves, but this time 1/3 of a level teaspoon of ground cloves, which looks like that. Give it another stir. I'll give it some pepper and salt now as well. And then just keep it stirring like that, with the heat fairly high, for about 3 to 4 minutes. Then after about 3 or 4 minutes on the high heat, you can then add 4 ounces of fresh cranberries. Then the whole thing begins to take on even more delightful colour. Now what happens with the cranberries is as they cook, some of them will begin to burst and release all their juices, which is very nice, and others will stay whole, which will look very pretty. And then you carry on cooking it on a low heat for another 5 to 10 minutes. Now you'll have to do a bit of biting and tasting, because it depends on how finely you shredded your cabbage as to how long that second lot of cooking will take. And you can see some of the cranberries now have smashed up a little bit, popped and released their juices, but some of them have remained nicely whole. And we're just going to add 2 more ingredients now. Turn the heat up and then add 1½ tablespoons of red wine vinegar and a heaped dessert spoon of dark, soft brown sugar. Stir that in, let that all bubble and melt, and then the red cabbage is ready to serve. But the good news about this recipe is that it's very, very well behaved, and what you can do with that is cook it early on in the day if you want to, and then just reheat it very gently, and it tastes just as good. If anything, the flavours seem to develop even more. Now I think it's time to just have a look at the pork, so we'll get that out of the oven. And there, what you can see is that the juices that we put in, the cider and cider vinegar, have reduced down quite a lot, and the pork and the shallots have continued to brown. So what you do now is you remove the meat from the juices so that you can reduce them down to make the sauce. Now you can see that the juices have concentrated and reduced to half their original volume. So now I'm going to just return the meat to the juices, and the finishing touch to the sauce for this is this, and this is 1.5 tablespoons of creme fraiche. And what we're going to do with that is just blend it, keeping the heat low now, just blend it in to the meat. And the lovely thing about creme fraiche is it doesn't split when you add it to heat. It's lovely to use in cooking. And then as soon as that's all blended into the juices, it's ready to go to the table. But what are we going to have for dessert? Well, here's a little selection from the winter collection. First of all, an unusual kind of apple pie. This has got 4 pounds of apples in it, but the pastry crust, as you can see, has got little flecks in it. That's because it's made with cheddar cheese. Next door, we've got a cranberry jelly, which is very nice to serve chilled after quite a rich meal in the party season. Then we've got a prune and apple and armagnac cake, and it's got an almond streusel topping which is made with slivered toasted almonds. Now if you remember the one crust pie that we made in the summer collection, this is the winter version, and this is made with spiced apples and raisins. If you want something cool after a rich meal, then I think you'd like apple soufflés. These are iced apple soufflés and they live in the freezer, and they've got a caramelised apple topping. Then something very colourful. The rich jewel-like arrangement that you can see there is grilled autumn fruits. These have got butter and sugar. They're put under the grill, served with their own syrup and a cider sabayon sauce. Well, on the summer collection we used masala, sweet masala wine, and it works really well if you use it with pears. And the pears, you can buy them rock hard and simmer them slowly in masala wine with cinnamon and vanilla pods, and then you get this wonderful, gorgeous autumnal colour glaze on them and a lovely flavour too. And cranberries, I told you cranberries were the flavour of this autumn, and these are one crust pies mini versions. These are individual portions of one crust pies and filled with the wonder of cranberries. Well, that's the beginning of our winter collection, but there's lots more to come, and I hope you'll come back next week when we're going to be doing warm soups and hot suppers. See you then.